Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really going beyond just the headlines. We're looking at how these moments of crisis, like this high-profile assassination, the troop deployment in Memphis, the budget fights in D.C., how they really force us to look at who we are as a nation.
Exactly. It's about our political identity, our divisions, even how we define justice.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack from these sources today.
It is. But what's really compelling, I think, is seeing the connections. These aren't just separate events. They're threads,
Yeah.
Showing bigger patterns in politics and society. So our mission today is really to cut through that noise.
Back to the important stuff.
Yeah, pull out the key insights, help you understand not just what's happening, but why it actually matters. It's kind of a shortcut to being really informed on this.
Okay, let's dive in then. First, big story. The aftermath of Charlie Kirk's death. The political shockwaves. We start in Utah with the formal charges against Tyler Robinson. Aggravated murder.
And they're seeking the death penalty.
Right, death penalty, lethal injection, or even firing squad if they can't get the components. But the sources immediately flag this, don't they?
They do. It's a really important point. I mean, prosecutors usually hold back on the death penalty unless it's, multiple victims, torture, something truly extreme.
So why push for it so hard here?
Well, the sources suggest politics, maybe emotion, are playing a big role. Huge public pressure, obviously. It feels like it's more than just the usual legal calculation going on.
And the core of the case seems to be these alleged text messages.
Yeah.
Between Robinson and his roommate, who was supposedly a romantic partner.
Okay.
They sound, explosive. Robinson apparently texts, I'm sorry, when asked if he did it, explains the motive. I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out. Even talks about his rifle, leaving no evidence.
Sounds like a slam dunk, right?
Yeah.
A smoking gun.
Yeah.
But when you dig into what the sources are saying, it gets, complicated. The texts themselves, they seem almost too perfect, like a neat little confession. And the writing style is described as kind of hacky for, a text message.
Right, not how people usually text.
Exactly. And then you contrast that with these other reports from Ken Klippenstein, The Washington Post, Discord chats where Robinson seems mostly apolitical, pro-gun, sure, but also pro-LGBTQ tolerance.
It's a completely different picture.
Totally different. Makes you question the narrative, or at least wonder about the authenticity of those texts. It's a real challenge for the prosecution and for how people see Robinson.
Okay, so moving beyond Robinson himself, the sources talk about this intense public anger, this idea that people will find someone who will pay.
Yeah.
It's not just about Robinson. There seems to be this organized push to punish anyone who criticized Charlie Kirk online, this wrongthink campaign.
Oh, absolutely. It's happening widely. The sources detail it. It's this powerful urge to just shut down dissent.
What kind of examples are we seeing?
Dozens of news stories about people getting suspended, fired from their jobs just for social media posts. One reader apparently got doxxed just for a comment.
Wow.
Yeah, it's this rapid, really aggressive effort to control the story, punish anyone who steps out of line.
And it's not just online trolls, right? It looks like it's reaching into government. Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody, or was it Bondi? The source mentions both.
Let's stick with Moody for now.
Okay, Moody initially says hate speech about Kirk will be punished, then backtracks, clarifies it to violent rhetoric after some pushback, even from Ted Cruz.
Right.
But the sources also say she ordered a DOJ study, scrubbed one, showing most domestic terrorism is right-wing, and threatens an Office Depot worker over printing vigil flyers. That's intense.
It is. And what's really interesting is how quickly terms like hate speech and violent rhetoric are being redefined and used.
How do the sources define those? Is there a clear line?
Well, violent rhetoric usually means speech directly inciting harm. Hate speech is broader, often legally fuzzy, covering inflammatory language against groups. Moody's quick shift suggests trying to find safer legal ground.
But still vague.
Very. And that ambiguity is key. Look at Marco Rubio ordering visa revocations for people who celebrated Kirk's death online. What does celebrated even mean in that context?
Right, who decides?
Exactly. It leaves a huge amount of power with the authorities.
Seems coordinated. Trump and J.D. Vance are threatening a major investigation into the left. Trump wants Antifa labeled domestic terrorists.
Even though the source points out Antifa is, overwhelmingly nonviolent, more a philosophy than some organized group.
So how do we sort through this? Genuine threats versus political talk.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, you got Elon Musk reportedly talking about violence and civil war on Twitter X. Kirk's own widow, Erica, saying, "You have no idea what you have unleashed." That's powerful.
And Marjorie Taylor Greene calling for secession.
A sitting congresswoman. The source brings up the 14th Amendment here, which is pretty serious stuff. It deals with insurrection, rebellion.
And doesn't make exceptions for peaceful insurrection.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It highlights the legal gravity of that kind of talk from an elected official.
And amidst all this grief and anger, there's also political opportunism. The sources are pretty blunt about this.
Yeah, they point to several things. J.D. Vance guest hosting Kirk's show. Clear 2028 move.
Redistricting efforts suddenly being in Kirk's name.
And various groups fundraising off his name, even using his widow's name right after his death. It's, yeah, striking.
It feels like the sources see a pattern here, a kind of logical fallacy.
They do. They call it a reverse no true Scotsman fallacy. It's not just some academic term. It's a political tactic.
Explain that.
Okay, two examples. First, this desire for Robinson to be trans, so they can then condemn all trans people as potential threats, using one outlier to define a whole group. Second, this absolutely crazy notion, as the source puts it, that a few loudmouths online represent an entire political side, like saying Democrats are celebrating Kirk's murder because of some tweets.
So taking an extreme example and painting everyone with that brush.
Exactly. It dehumanizes opponents, justifies harsher rhetoric, lets them target whole groups instead of just individuals. It's about weaponizing the narrative, really. A crucial thing to spot when you're reading the news.
So what's the counter to this? How does responsible political discourse look in this environment?
Well, the sources offer contrast. They point to Democratic leaders, Clinton, Obama, Biden, all condemning the violence, clearly.
Biden's comment was notable, given Kirk had called for his execution.
Very generous, yes. And Bernie Sanders put out what the source calls a pitch-perfect video denouncing political violence, despite, his huge policy disagreements with Kirk.
So the takeaway is,
to judge a political group, look at its leaders, the people who actually got millions of votes. That's a fair measure. The sources suggest the initial leeway period for just raw grief is over. Now it's about clarity, responsible talk. These leaders showed that commitment to democratic basics.
Okay, so while that political firestorm rages, let's shift gears. A totally different kind of intervention. President Trump ordering troops into Memphis. The source calls it an obvious violation of the Posse Comitatus Act. Can you remind us what that act is?
Sure. Posse Comitatus is from way back 1878. Basically, it stops the U.S. military being used for domestic law enforcement like regular policing, making arrests. Unless Congress specifically allows it, usually in extreme situations like massive disasters or, serious civil unrest, insurrections. Sending federal troops for general crime fighting in a city, especially without the governor asking for it, that really crosses the line between military and civilian control.
A core principle.
Yeah, foundational. It looks like bypassing normal civilian government.
And we have insights from someone who used to live in Memphis, MS, in Canton, New York. They say to understand Memphis, you need to start with race.
Yeah.
The city's 61% black, but it's not a simple divide. Segregated neighborhoods, but like a patchwork, not just the wrong side of the tracks.
And that quote MS shared is really telling. In the South, the white man doesn't care how close you get, as long as you don't get too high.
That's deep. What does that really mean in practice?
It gets at those systemic power dynamics. You might see some surface-level integration, people living near each other, but actual upward mobility, economic power, real political influence for black communities. That often hits a wall, subtly or not so subtly. It explains why simply sending in troops without tackling those root causes often fails or even makes things worse.
So how does this segregation connect with poverty and crime in Memphis? Is it straightforward?
Not exactly. The sources point out this imbalance. There's a large black middle class in Memphis, and their areas have crime rates similar to white middle class areas.
Yep.
But the poor neighborhoods, overwhelmingly black. And that's where the crime problem is most severe. White poverty exists, but it's often more rural outside the city proper.
So the crime issue is real.
Definitely real. But local news, with its if it bleeds, it leads focus, can sometimes skew perception. And that anecdote the source shares. Someone's saying they've only been robbed at gunpoint twice.
Yeah, wow.
It shows a level of normalization of violence that's deeply worrying for the people living there.
Okay, so given all that complexity, race, poverty, segregation, what does it mean for sending in troops? Where would they even go? What's the likely outcome?
That's the big question, right? The source really doubts the effectiveness. If troops go downtown, tourist spots, does that help the areas with the most crime? Probably not.
And if they go into the poorest, mostly black neighborhoods?
The reaction is likely to be strong and racially divided, as the source predicts. You risk escalating tensions, clashes. There's a deep historical mistrust of federal interventions like this in those communities.
Even deploying them in middle-class or white areas seems tricky.
Right, because the justification for the deployment high crime often doesn't fit those areas in the same way. So, yeah, the source concludes it's really hard to imagine any possibility of a good outcome for the people of Memphis from this specific strategy. Real solutions need to dig deeper systemic issues, economic inequality, community-led efforts, not just a military presence.
Okay, let's pivot to Washington. Congress, back at it, playing budget chicken. Shutdown looms September 30th. Speaker Mike Johnson put out a stopgap bill, 91 pages, calls it basically clean.
It includes money for politician security, unlocks D.C. funding.
But basically clean for 91 pages sounds interesting.
It is telling, yeah. And the real fight isn't what's in it, it's what's not in it.
Which is?
Democrats are insisting on extending those expiring health care subsidies. The ACA ones, Affordable Care Act subsidies, put in place during the pandemic.
Ah, right. Those are significant.
Huge. Without them, millions could see their health insurance premiums shoot way up, so it's a massive deal for Democrats.
And Johnson's response?
Flat refusal. He claims the Medicaid reforms they want to repeal are popular and very effective.
Despite polls showing the opposite.
Yeah, polls show 2-to-1 opposition to those reforms. So there's a real disconnect there.
So Johnson says popular, polls say unpopular. How does he square that? Is it just playing to the base and neither side is budging?
It seems like it. Johnson's likely focused on his conservative base for them. Opposing healthcare spending is key, polls or no polls. And yeah, Schumer and Jeffries want to show they're fighting for those subsidies. Johnson's reportedly getting his signals straight from Trump.
Classic standoff incoming.
Looks like it. It's as much about political theater for their bases as it is about actual governing. And we know shutdowns have real consequences, federal services, the economy, but that often gets pushed aside in these fights.
Okay, beyond the budget drama, there's talk about midterm conventions, Democrats thinking about bringing them back. Haven't done that since, what, the 70s or 80s?
Yeah, possibly as a way to define their message, energize people.
And Trump's reaction?
Immediate, according to the sources. He wants one too. Loves the publicity attention, calls it quite the event and very exciting.
Of course. But will it actually help Republicans?
The sources are skeptical. Trump already basically dictates the whole GOP platform and message. So a convention might just be low energy, maybe low attendance, same old faces, Kid Rock, Scott Baio people already in his camp.
Not exactly broadening the appeal.
Right.
Yeah.
The sources kind of suggest Trump sees it less as policymaking and more like appointment television, his favorite kind.
Okay, so let's look at a real-world example. Massachusetts Democrats just had their state convention. The source sees it as a preview of a national midterm convention, maybe even the 2028 Dem race, a vigorous face-off.
Yeah, and it really gets to that core question. What is a party today? What defines it?
What were the two sides in Mass?
Basically. Move to the center, be kind of vague, think Chuck Schumer style versus be bold, be explicit about helping working people more, Bernie Sanders, AOC.
And the fight was over the party platform for 2025.
Exactly. The platform committee did something pretty drastic. They stripped out nearly 50 specific planks from the 2021 platform. Bold stuff.
Like what?
Things like divesting public pensions from fossil fuels, big climate issue, single-payer health care, huge systemic change. Abolishing civil asset forfeiture.
Remind us what that is again?
That's where police can seize money or property they suspect is linked to crime, often without even charging the owner. Hits poor communities hard.
Got it. So they removed all that.
Yeah, and even changed public safety and criminal legal reform to just community safety. More ambiguous. It wasn't just tweaking, it was a major dilution of progressive goals.
So the grassroots activists, how did they take this?
Not well. A coalition of progressive groups, labor unions, they mobilized fast. Their goal, scrap the weak 2025 draft, reinstate the bolder 2021 platform.
There's a quote in the source.
Yeah, really captures it. Democrats take offense. It silences decades of organizing, erases victories we already won. Mass Dems should be leading instead of cowering and watering them down. Strong words.
So what happened at the convention?
Drama. The chair apparently tried to block their amendment, even though they had almost 1,000 delegate signatures.
Oh, no.
Yeah, but after a lot of parliamentary wrangling, procedural votes and debates, the amendment to restore the 2021 platform passed. Overwhelmingly by voice vote. Real grassroots power.
That is powerful. The real win for the activists. What's the takeaway from that fight in Massachusetts?
The bold commitment side won. There's another great quote from an advocate. You don't grow our tent by cutting the protections for the people holding up the tent. The workers, veterans, immigrants, LGBTQ plus communities of color, and people with disabilities.
So protecting the core base.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The victory didn't just restore the platform. It strengthened that progressive coalition in the state. It showed that a unified grassroots can actually define the party's identity, push back against efforts to dilute it. A big signal for future fights, probably.
So wrapping this all up, quite a deep dive today. We've seen how one tragedy sparks this firestorm over grief, politics, wrongthink. We looked at Memphis, how deep issues of race and economics complicate things like public safety interventions, and then these internal party battles over identity, direction, D.C. budget fights, state conventions.
Yeah, and the common thread, maybe, is how easily big events get hijacked for existing political fights. How individual actions get blown up to define, or really misdefine, entire groups of people. Spotting those dynamics is so key to making sense of everything flying at us.
So a final thought for you, our listener, to chew on. As you follow the news, the political debates swirling around, try asking yourself, okay, who actually benefits from framing the story this way? What's the bigger agenda possibly at play here?
How do you tell genuine concern apart from just political maneuvering when there's so much noise?
Yeah. Keep those questions front of mind as you do your own deep dive into the world out there.